And I had no idea what I was going to do when I arrived in Arizona. I was like, I want to get there, and I guess maybe I'll go back into medical sales. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. Now here I am. I'm not in medical sales. I'm a real estate agent. I'm speaking on mental health. I have an online, training business that's successful. And my life looks completely different. Right. But because I had that reference point, I could go, wow, look how wrong you were. You were panicking about stuff that never happened. That's also a good thing to realize. Like, we need to be reminded that sometimes our mind, we are not all of our thoughts, just the thoughts that we choose to believe, right? So sometimes it's good for our mind to realize, like, I got that wrong. So maybe these fears that I keep pushing out in the future, maybe I shouldn't be concerned about them until they actually become a reality.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rockstars podcast. I am Shelby Johnson, and today I'm here with Clayton Echard. Clayton is a former collegiate and professional athlete who played for the Seattle Seahawks. He was a former lead on ABC's The Bachelor. He has guest appearances on Jimmy Kimmel Live with Ryan and Kelly, and has been interviewed by People Magazine, Men's Health, E! News, tons of freaking stuff. He's also an advocate for fitness and mental health. On Instagram, maybe you know him from there, he has 267,000 followers. But what you might not know is that Clayton is also a Scottsdale, Arizona real estate agent. Probably the most impressive thing on that resume, right? So today with Clayton, we're going to dig into two primary things. We're going to talk about how athletics translates into business and mental health in a crazy industry that we live in. So Clayton, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Real Estate Rockstars.
Thank you so much for having me. That was an incredible intro. I think sometimes I'll say it's even nice to sometimes be reminded of the things that you've done, because it's so easy to get caught up in what you're currently doing and not feeling like you're doing enough. So thank you for reminding me. I'm like, okay, I've done some stuff. I can give myself some grace to realize where I want to be in the future is not maybe here in the moment, but it'll come in time.
Dude, that's right. Even reading it, I was like, oh my God, I'm like nervous now. I'm going to talk to Clayton.
I will say that I had a cup of coffee with the Seahawks. I feel like I have to something internal tells me every time, like, I was only there for 2 months, and people are like, well, you still made it. I'm like, I just feel like I have to let you all know I was not a journeyman in the NFL. I did play 5 years at Mizzou, but as far as the Seahawks, again, I said I was in and out like a bank robbery, but nonetheless, it was still a cool experience.
Dude, super cool. You got the jersey. That's, check the blog.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's dig into that. So, I love athletes in a way that they're like hard and gritty, and they are impressive no matter what you are interested in the world. Like, most people are impressed by athletes. And so I was hoping that you could dig into your time in athletics and like the lessons you learned and how they translate into business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've reflected upon this multiple times, especially as I've aged. And I thought, I am the way I am because of the things that I've done. And so much of my life, my identity was in football specifically, up until I was 23. But I think I started playing back in sixth grade. So I don't remember how old you are at that age, 11 years old maybe, or whatever. So I spent, 12, 13 years playing this sport, and it was all that I knew. And it's what everyone else knew me for. I played at a high level, played in college, played in the pros briefly. And then I had to be able to transition that into the real world, into the workforce. And I realized very quickly that I was able to find a lot of commonalities amongst individuals from all different backgrounds. And that was due to my time playing football. We, as a team with 100 plus guys from all over the country, guys from different neighborhoods, different ethnicities. I mean, we had it all. It was a melting pot of a team. And what I found is that we could all still find something similar amongst each other. We just sometimes you have to dig a little deeper. But I realized that there's a way to find commonalities, and a lot of that has to come down to, well, the deeper you dig, you realize most people just want to feel loved, respected, seen, and heard, and feel valued. And so, a lot of people have goals and aspirations. So you can always find commonalities of like, what is it that you're pushing for? What is it that you want in life? And I've had these deep conversations with people, and those are beyond surface level, but you realize you build very strong connections when you are having these deep conversations. So yeah, we were playing football. yeah, we were all put into a room, and basically for 5 years while I was there, we were all meant to be like a cohesive unit. But then a lot of those impactful conversations were in the locker room. And that's when we would talk about life. And that's when I realized, like, wait, we have a whole lot more in common than what I would have first expected. And that is the same way for the workforce. That's the same way in real estate. It's a relationship-based business. And a lot of times people will look at someone and they'll judge a book by its cover. They'll say, I don't have anything in common with that person. They look completely different than I do. They came from a different background. But that's just not entirely true. You don't know until you dig deeper. And that's what I've found is like, it's translated extremely well, because now I'm meeting people. And just because at face value, we don't look similar, I've actually found that some of the people that I have the closest ties to, it's because of their morals, values, and beliefs. But that's only found out through having deeper conversations.
So I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I'm like, okay, I'm with you. I want to dig deeper and find these commonalities. But how? I feel like I get stuck at the surface level. I don't really know what to say or do to break through that initial barrier.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think you can come out the gate and just be like, hey, what's your why? Although, I mean, that's great. That's actually probably a fair question, but what are your morals, values, and beliefs? People are like, what? I just met you. It just takes time and repetition or consistency, trying to, you're building a base. That's what it comes down to. You meet somebody, you have the introductory conversation, you get to know who they are, you get to know about their family, their life, what they're currently doing. And then you just have to be consistent with that individual. Follow up. I mean, I know the real estate agents know all about the follow-up and how many times it takes to follow up with somebody and they ignore you and then you keep following up. But that's relationships. You have to show somebody that you're interested in them. So you're not going to get someone's business. You're not going to get someone to trust you after one conversation. You have to have multiple conversations, check back in. You have to be able to regurgitate what they've said to you prior, show that you've been actively listening to that individual, that you are actually hearing them and not just talking at them. And so you build that. It's building that foundation, and then eventually those conversations get deeper and deeper.
Yeah. So I recently read this book. I do a book club because I'm a super nerd. And one of the books was The Friendship Formula. Have you heard of it?
I have not, no.
Okay. I hadn't either. But they talked about the friendship formula. There's 4 key components of what actually makes people friendly. And it's frequency, duration, proximity, and intensity. And I feel like that's kind of like what you just described, where it's like, it's not going to just come out the gate. You have to build a genuine relationship. You have to be consistent and continue to pursue the relationship more than just the surface level.
Yes. Yeah, that's incredible. I love that when people can, really, they can coin these, right? Like they take these specific words, because my mind just goes crazy and I spew out all this stuff, but then to make it really clear and concise, I love that. Actually, I feel like I want to look into that further, but it's a great way to put it. Yeah. I mean, you have to be consistent over time. That's how you're going to have success in your work. That's how you're going to have success in relationships. Like whether you're building a business, whether you're building a relationship with somebody, it takes consistency over time, right? You can't date somebody and just put all your effort in 1 week and then give up, right? They're going to be like, you were so great a week ago, or you were so great for the last 2 years. And all of a sudden in the last year, you've just given up, right? Consistency over time. You want to have success in life. That's the formula.
Speaking of dating, someone, I instantly go to the fact that you were the Bachelor, and I'm like dying to know what happened behind the scenes. We won't go there yet. If we have time, I'm going to hit you up and ask you at the end.
Absolutely.
But something else for the sports analogy. What would you say, like with work ethic or reps, like did any of that translate over?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, what I think so great about sports is that there's winners and losers, and that's fine because that's life, right? There's peaks and valleys. That's how life goes. Sometimes you're on top of the world, i.e., there was a year that we were in 2013. We were the Cotton Bowl champions. We were ranked number 5 in the nation, and we felt like you could not beat us. I mean, we would have loved to be number 1 overall, but we're like, man, we had a really great season. The prior year, I think we went 5-7. So we missed a bowl game, if I'm not mistaken, or we might have made one. I can't remember exactly, but we were basically at the bottom. So you had these peaks and these valleys. But what sports taught me was that just because you fail doesn't make you a failure, right? Or you can say just because you lose doesn't make you a loser. It's the same thing. You only become that when you believe yourself to be that. But what I loved about sports was like you can fail, but you can get back up. You got another game. they would say in football, we had this phrase, park and refocus. So when you were within the game itself and you had a bad play, instead of, a lot of times people will go back and think about, oh my gosh, I messed up. And they'll get in their head and they'll get in this negative spiral of thoughts. And then basically they can't perform because all they're doing is they're in their head thinking about what's happened in the past. So we had this phrase, park and refocus, stop, refocus, and look ahead at the next play, which again, I use that in my day to day now. If something goes wrong, I'm like, it went wrong. I can't fix it. It's over. All I can do is park it, refocus, and look ahead as to what I can do now moving forward. And what did I learn from the past that I just made the same mistake? I was always told, if you don't make the same mistake twice, you're okay. You're going to fail. I was told that in medical sales by my former coworker. He's like, just don't make the same mistake twice. You're gonna mess up, but just keep doing the same things and learning. And then as long as you're not doing the same thing wrong 3 times, then I'm happy. We're good.
Quick pause. Are you looking for new ways to lead generate? Aaron built his own software to generate off-market seller leads and just released a version for you. PropHawk is the most efficient and least expensive software out there, designed to get you talking to sellers within minutes. With all the data of PropStream, the CRM power of InvestorFuse, and texting capabilities of Launch Control, you can get everything in one system for a fraction of the price of those others. Your investment is just $20 a month and includes an hour-long free onboarding call, so you start talking with sellers today. Go to prophawk.com and sign up. Now, back to the show. The park and refocus is freaking awesome. I say the one where it's be a rain jacket, not a sponge. It's like almost the same, not quite, but it's like basically let it slide right off you. Don't let it absorb into your soul and sit there. So it's the same concept where it's like, if you spend all that time dwelling on the past, you're not spending that energy focusing on what you need to be doing now and into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a matter of presence. I've found that to be big in my life as recently. It's like the word I repeat the most in a day. It's like, I just want to be present. Because if I'm in my head thinking about the past or fear of the future, then I'm going to be just trailing off as someone's talking to me, and I'll be missing out on all that present information that they're giving me because I'm just so focused. Like, we do this all the time. We think about, what am I going to say to this person? Like, they start talking, we hear the first thing they say, and we start planning our response, and then we miss out on everything after that. And it's like, that's the power of presence, is like, or the lack of it, is you can miss out on so much if you're not there in that moment. And a lot of us, I think, struggle with that.
Where did you learn this stuff?
I have went on a deep self-improvement journey in the last 2 years. And it was really, the catalyst was going on The Bachelor. All of my insecurities and weaknesses were thrown out there for everybody to see. And at first, my ego, because we all have an ego, it's there for good and bad. It protects you, but it also sometimes can get in the way, and you can defend yourself to a point where when you're backed into a corner and you start to lash out at others. Well, that's what I did. Basically, my weaknesses came out, were on full display, and then I felt backed into a corner, and my ego was trying to fight. I was going on podcasts. I was like explaining myself, explaining. And then I read a comment one day online, and it changed my life. It's crazy how one conversation or one comment can change everything. And the person said, I hear what Clayton's saying, and it's not that I don't understand where he's coming from, but he continues to try to explain why he did what he did instead of just take accountability for the people that he hurt. And that just hit me hard. Like, it was like a sack of bricks just hit me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, all I have to do is just take accountability. No matter, like, even if my, it's the perception versus reality, but it's my intentions versus, perceptions. Like, I intended to treat someone a certain way, but they perceived my actions and it hurt them. And so they took it a certain way, and that caused pain. It caused pain regardless of what my intentions were. I was so busy trying to explain my intentions that I couldn't just take accountability for the fact that I hurt somebody regardless of what my intentions were. That was a powerful moment. And I was like, wow, I need to focus on more so just, again, understanding that I live in my own reality, but other people live in their own reality, and their perception is what matters, especially when I'm talking to them. And if I care about them, I need to focus more on their perception than my own perception, or at least give them equal weight.
That's so true in real estate too, where it's like, and I I think this way a lot, where it doesn't matter what I want or what I say. All it matters is how the other person is receiving that information. And
Yes.
it's our job really, whether it be in life or whether it be in real estate, to be the chameleon and to identify how the other person intakes information and needs to be, guided through whatever situation. And then it's our job to adjust to that person.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I can think back to a couple of deals I've done in the past where something that didn't seem like a big deal to me was a big deal to them. But what I did was I heard what they said, or I was listening to what they were saying. I could see how they were reacting, and I go, okay, this is a big deal to them. Therefore, now I should treat it as if it's a big deal. Because the issue is, if I blow it off and go, yeah, man, to be honest with you, I think you're overreacting. Like it's not as big of a deal as you think it is. Well, now I'm discrediting their viewpoint, right? And in a relationship business, you think you're going to keep clientele around when you're discrediting their perceptions? No, like it's not that you need to be fake, but if something's important to that individual, then make it important to you too. And then try to find a way. If you're like, maybe sometimes people get emotional, right? Like buying a house is one of the most emotional things that I think you could ever do. It's a massive investment. And that person is going to end up, or family or whatever, is going to move into that house, and they're going to build their life within those walls, right? There's a lot at stake. So it's a very emotional buy, right? Everything has to be perfect in their eyes. And so the thing is like, it doesn't matter what we think. Like, we have to be able to treat our customer, our client, with respect and say, okay, if this is important to them, then it's important, right? And if they say, I want to, the deal is hinging upon this contingency, and you're like, this whole deal is going to fall through. Like, I need to convince this person out of it. No, it's like, go to the other agent and say, hey, this is what they really want. Even if you think it's a ridiculous contingency, it's like, you're representing them, right? And it's not for you to decide what is, in my opinion, at least, it's not for you to decide what's valid and what's not, right? Like, you're dealing with these clients, and everyone's a little different, and you have to give them all, you have to show them like, hey, I'm here to represent you, right? I'm not here to challenge you, at least, and tell you you're wrong. I'm here to understand you. That's what it's all about. Not about right or wrong. It's about understanding.
Okay. So you had this like kind of rock bottom moment, through The Bachelor. It exposed yourself to literally everyone, so many people, completely vulnerable. You're trying to defend yourself, and then you read this comment online and it like hits you hard. So what do you do after that? Let's say that someone else is realizing that they are not taking accountability for their actions. Like, were there books or podcasts, or what did you do?
Oh man. Yeah. So I wrote a book myself. I wrote it for me. It's called 180 Degrees. And it was my journey, again, the 180, why 180 degrees? Well, I was in a place of self-doubt. I was walking down this path of self-doubt. But then I was able to reorient myself to a place of self-love and self-confidence, right? So basically walking down one path, 180 degrees opposite direction, walking down this path of self-love and self-confidence. But how I got there, I found that, like, yeah, certainly I can recommend books. I can recommend podcasts, and I do. I mean, there's Jay Shetty has the #1 mental health podcast in the world. It's called On Purpose. And that one, I was a sponge. I'd listen to all of his episodes because he brings on incredible thought leaders in their industries. And so I was listening to a podcast a day. That was my goal, was like, let me listen to one a day. And I did that for, I think, a year. He has so many episodes that you could listen to one a day, and I think you'd still be listening to him years later. So, and he comes out with them so consistently. So that's somebody that I would say, like, here's a guy. Another one, Huberman Labs, Andrew Huberman. He takes a more science-based approach. Like he not that Jay Shetty doesn't, but like Andrew Huberman, like, really talks about the science behind all these different things, the mind, body. And so it's a combination. I'm like, I want to know about mind and body because they work hand in hand. Beyond that, though, my book, I outlined it the way that I did because I realized that for everybody, their journey is different. So in order to get to a place of realizations or self-realization and self-improvement, I had the 6 pillars in my book. I broke them down 30 degrees at a time. So 6 times 30, 180. But I felt that you have to build off of these pillars, right? And I put the first ones first because they're the ones you can do right away. Communication is #1. Communication, you want to change your life, you got to start talking about it. You got to start having these conversations, even with yourself, right? That's where mindfulness comes in. But if you want to change something, you have to first be aware of it. And then you have to have the willingness to want to change. But in order to become aware of something, you have to have that thought or you have to have a conversation. So communication is number one. Then I had number two, which is education. And again, I kept these specific, but not so specific where it's like, here's the 5 steps of education, because I know that for everybody, they're going to find something different in the education, pillar that works for them versus me. So I think, but this after communication, you got to start doing digging online on Google and start looking for resources, and whatever you find interesting, just go out there and search for it. And then beyond that, I have, the next steps are preparation, starting to put a plan in place to build upon the communication, what you've learned from communication and what you've learned from educating yourself. Now you're putting a plan in place. This next step is determination. That's the consistency part. You got to start doing it consistently. You can't expect to change your life in a week, right? Or your mindset in a week or even a year. It's going to take time. And then the fifth one was congregation. I believe you have to have a support system around you in life, because sometimes life gets so challenging to the point where your mind overtakes itself. Your ego is screaming at you and you feel like you're failing. You got to have a good support system to pull you out in those moments where life seems like it becomes too much, right? And they'll remind you of who you truly are. So having that congregation, and then realization is step number 6. I think that's where all the previous pillars will lead you to a place of realization where you're like, oh my gosh, this is where you see the mindset shifts. This is where you come to terms with why you are who you are. But you have to enact those 5 previous ones in order to get to a place of realization.
Real quick, before we get back to the episode, 2 things I wanted to share. First, thank you so much for tuning in week after week. It really means the world to all of us. Second, we feel like we're just getting started. If you enjoy what we do here, please follow us on this app, share an episode, or give us a quick review. I promise we're working hard behind the scenes to make this show as good as possible now and into the future. Thanks, guys. Back to the show. I want to go to preparation. Let's say you are aware and you have the communication with yourself and you've educated yourself and you're like, I want to put a plan in place. What can you tell us a little bit more about that step?
Yeah. So again, I'll be specific with my own story. But I also like to just say, like, hey, this could look differently for somebody else. But for me, I realized that, okay, I want to be able to try to see life through a new lens, or just be able to understand different perspectives other than my own. So establishing, what is this goal? It's like, oh, I want to have a deeper insight into the world around me. And so I said, okay, I need to start having conversations with people, right? That's the communication, the education. I was going online, but then I'm like, okay, now I need to be able to establish this plan to do it consistently. So I started, my biggest thing, I'm a scheduler. So when you put it in a schedule, I think you're more likely to do it. So I started time blocking my schedule and my iCal on my phone, right? I just went to my calendar app. That comes with the iPhone itself. And I started to say, okay, where in my day can I put this 1-hour podcast? So I'm going to block off time for the 1-hour podcast. When am I going to, okay, what are the other things I have to do in my life? Well, I'm also a real estate agent. Okay, so let me block off, I would at least block off 3 hours, if not more. Again, I should say this so everyone knows, I'm not technically a full-time real estate agent. I do other things. So should you be doing more than 3 hours a day? Yeah, I mean, it varies. Sometimes I'll do 8 hours. But I at least blocked a time where I'm like, you're going to at the very least, do something every single day. Then I had my, mental health advocacy, building upon that. Then I had time blocked for my fitness and nutrition coaching with my clients. At the time, I had like 70 or 80 clients online. So I was blocking this all out. And then that would ensure that whenever these notifications went off, I'm like, okay, switch gears. Now you're going to focus on this. Switch gears. Now you're going to focus on this. So I think that's a really, like, for someone that's like, how do I put a plan in place? Build it out ahead of time. Sit down on a Sunday. I would always usually do this on a Sunday because I plan for the entire week. So I sit down on my Sunday and I give myself an hour to basically plan out my entire week. What am I doing this week? I'll look at my schedule, what's already in there, and then where's my free time and where can I add stuff? It's a good starting point.
Okay, so you have your On Purpose podcast. You say Jay Petty, is that correct?
Jay Shetty.
Shetty. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. And then Huberman, which I like that one. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, so at this point, you kind of have those people that you're listening to on a consistent basis. And did you have to change your group of friends? Did you have to change your environment in order to put yourself in the right headspace?
Man, that's a good question. I almost feel like yes, the answer is yes. It was tough because I realized I started to grow beyond certain relationships. It's not that I just became what I was looking for and what they were looking for became too different. So like while some of my prior relationships, we worked really well because we had similar commonalities and interests. But what I found was as I went on this mental health journey, I started finding a different crowd. And then I started wanting to be around that crowd more than my old crowd, because my old crowd didn't care to have those conversations. I tried to bring it up with them about mindfulness, and they just said, "Oh, that Hollywood stuff, yeah, whatever. Like that's that woo woo stuff that you're talking about. The Bachelor world got to you," and they would kind of discredit it, And I don't think they were being mean about it. They just didn't have any interest, and so I found myself not wanting to really be around them as much. I was like, I just don't get value out of our conversations like I do with this group over here. That's like super into that topic. So yeah, I changed my environment, and it's like you heard that people hear the saying, "You are who you surround yourself with," and it's very true. I can attest to that. My group has changed. I still have my family, friends, my loved ones, but I know when I want to have a deep conversation, I can go to some of them. But now I have different people that I can go to when I want to get to that point.
I'm listening and I'm like, yes, I know that the people I surround myself with are not the ones that I want to have certain either business conversations or self-development and grow into the person that I want to be. I'm just not around those type of people. How do I find the right people?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question, because as you were posing that question, I started thinking about what's important for me when I'm screening these individuals, quote unquote screening, what am I looking for? And it's experience. If you were wanting to put out a fire, you wouldn't ask a lawyer how to put out a fire. You would ask a firefighter. So, first off, you got to figure out who is it that I want to be around, right? Like, what's the demographic? Like, what's the profession? Okay. Now I got to think like them. Where do they hang out? Right. So this is where you do a deep dive. It's like, okay, you want to find, like in real estate, you want to find, the clientele that's buying the multi-million dollar listings. They're going to be hanging out. They're probably going to have, if they're buying nice houses up in that price point, they're probably going to have nice cars. They're, so you could probably find car events that they're going to show up at. They might be collectors of watches. So maybe you're going to go, find out like, where these collectors are hanging out at. So that's where Google's great, because you can just start Googling these things and uncovering where these individuals are.
What am I Googling to find friends who like self-development? What am I Googling? Friends who think like me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So for me, I found that like for self-improvement, like Jay Shetty, his podcast, right? Like I found that, okay, he has a podcast. He also has an Instagram. So I would go on his Instagram. Well, I knew that obviously if I'm interested in him, people that are also interested in him are going to also go to his Instagram. So then I started clicking in the comments. I started seeing the guests he was bringing on, and then I would click their Instagram profiles, and then I would see who they followed and who they talked to. And I would find that there was this web of like-minded individuals that were kind of all going on each other's podcasts. But then you start to see people in the comments that are commenting often. You're like, that individual must be, like they're clearly into the self-improvement, because I see them commenting on multiple people's, different influencers pages. It's kind of like stalking, but I think that's how you can find it, is like nowadays everything is so public with social media. But you just find out who's this person that I look up to or I like and listen to. And then you can typically find out who's following them or who's around their circle very easy with social media.
And then just slide into their DMs. And then we loop it all the way back to what you said in the beginning, and we start that relationship building.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't want to make this sound creepy, but like, let's say you follow somebody and your intention is you just want to get within that circle, but you don't have a single connection, right? Like you're like, I have no idea where who I can get in with in this circle, but they're posting on social media and they're like, oh, I'm going to this car event, in a week, or see me at this conference. I'm going to be speaking at this conference in a month. Buy a ticket and go to the conference. You're going to be in the same room with that individual, and then you can go up to them at that event and say, hey, I just want to let you know, whatever, right? That's when you can have that first initial conversation with that person. And then maybe you hit it off right out the gate, or maybe they're like, hey, it was so great talking to you. And then they speak at another event. You go to another event, and it's like, then they see you again. They go, oh, hey, I remember you from last time, right? Obviously, don't make it creepy. You don't be like, I'm following you. I've gone to all your last 10 events, right? But I think that, again, people post whatever they post online. If you know someone somewhere, you don't have an in, go to that event and go say hello to them. I've had people come up to me, and I'm not just because of my time on TV, but do I know if they, went to that event for me only or for something else? Who knows? Who cares? They didn't tell me that. They just said, hey, I like everything you're doing in mental health and all this. And we had a good conversation. And I walked out of there. I'm like, oh, this person's cool. And then I saw them at a later event. I went up and talked to them myself. I was like, hey, what's going on? So yeah, that's how you can do it.
I did this exact same strategy, but I didn't know that I was doing it. You just verbalized it in a way. I'm like, oh, that's like an actual technique. But back in 2018 was my first year in real estate, and 2019 I was like swinging. Like I was doing all the things, going to all the events, and I was really into real estate investing at that time. So Bigger Pockets, do you know about Bigger Pockets?
Yeah,
so Bigger Pockets, it was like the thing, and 2019 was their first year as a conference, and I went, and then I went to FinCon that year, and there was a Bigger Pockets crew at each event. And then I went to Bigger Pockets every year after that, along with all of the other little real estate events. And it was in October of 2020 where I hadn't even been in real estate that long. I mean, I'd done a lot of, things by that point, which was great, but I got to be on the Bigger Pockets podcast, which is like a really, really big podcast. And people are like, how did you do that? Like what? And I'm like, well, really it's because of conferences, from showing up with that frequency, the duration, those list of things in the beginning, which are get around people while doing something that's, an authentic fit to your personality that shares your interest in a consistent manner. And if you continue to do that, by the third freaking event, they were like, oh, hey, Shelby, what's up? Come over here. And I'm like, oh my God, who, me? You know what I mean? So I love
and I think what's important too, you mentioned it just now, authenticity. If you have, I think everyone has a sense of selfish motives, right? Like that's what drives us. Like we all want certain things in life. But if you're authentically just trying to better yourself, people see that. Now, if someone sees that you're just trying to make a quick buck on them, like those individuals will sniff that out as well. In your case, like you were just wanting to learn from these great minds. And so you're like, I want to be around them. And they saw that genuine passion and authenticity. And then they let their guard down. They're like, oh, she's harmless, right? But I've had people that they do show up to events that I go to. But they're looking for something out of me, and they're like, "Oh, let's snap a quick picture," and they post on their social media. Look who I'm with, right? It's a status thing for them, right? And like people sniff that out that have experience, and they go, "That's not someone I want to be with." But when you have a genuine curiosity to learn and an authenticity about yourself, you maybe don't hit it off the first time, but like you said, the third time, there you go. You're like, "What the heck? I'm in this group all of a sudden after 3 times," but that's because you were consistent. You showed up, and eventually they welcomed you in.
100%. So I have this thing called Pints and Properties. It's a real estate meetup that we do. And I tell newbies the first time they come up, they're like, hey, I want to get into real estate, or I want to be in real estate investing. And I'm like, come back, for the next 6 months. And by month 6, if you're still here and you're still interested, dude, I will pour everything I got into you and we can build this, the whole thing. But the thing is, people they come once, they come maybe twice, and then they peter up, And so it is about that continuing to show up. And once you do that, it's amazing how many people just fall off by not continuing to show up.
Yeah. I believe that's a tactic that a lot of successful individuals implement because they're also protecting their time. They're like, I'm not going to pour into somebody that showed up twice. I want to know that they want it badly enough. And there will be that person that's sitting there at the end of 6 months that's still showing up because they feel there's so much value there. And that's the person that successful individual, because their time is valuable, right? Like they built their success. So all of a sudden, like you're still sitting here after 6 months. You saw this room go from 100 people down to 1. You're still here. Now I'm going to teach you everything I know. I'm going to take you under my wing. They'll probably they'll become your mentor, and that is priceless at that point. But there's a weed out, method where people are like, I want to see if this person's for real. And so I've seen that the higher up I climb, the more successful individuals, again, if they gave everybody 20 minutes in a day that came up and talked to them, they wouldn't have enough time to talk to everybody. They'd run out of time to do anything productive. So I understand that sometimes when people are very brief, it's like, okay, they're not being rude. They just right now are being brief with me because they don't know whether or not I'm someone that they want to spend time with or not. Right. And so it's like that. Don't take offense to that. Just go, okay, that's where I'm at today. Maybe the next day that, or the next time you see them, they give you another additional 2 minutes. That's a win. Even if you're like, oh, it was only a 4-minute conversation. Well, the first time it was a 30-second one, right? That's progress. Progress is progress, no matter how small it is. So I think it's just like being understanding these individuals, like they can't pour in everybody. So, you have to show them that you're worth pouring into.
A quick word on our toolbox. We know it can be overwhelming thinking about all of the systems you want to build into your business, and that is why we ask guests to submit their favorite checklist, template, or tracker so you don't have to build from the ground up. Go to realestaterockstarsnetwork.com and click Toolbox for your free access. Thanks so much. Okay, so you wrote this book called 180 Degrees. Listeners, go check it out if you haven't already. You also are speaking on mental health. Is that on like the same subject? Are you going in on like a book tour, or what does that piece look like?
Not a book tour. Yeah, no, I talk about really my goal is to destigmatize the conversations around mental health. So a big one that I've been hammering on, and it's interesting because if someone asks me, well, what do you speak on? It's like, well, it really changes because I change on a daily or weekly basis, right? Like, but right now, what I'm really hinging on in the conversations I'm having, I'm targeting like middle school, high school, college age kids, and we're talking about the effects of childhood trauma on like adults, like how that can carry into your adulthood later in life. Now, again, I'm not a therapist, but I share my story because I was able to find the correlation between 7th grade mental health struggles and my 28-year-old self. And there was a direct tie. And so by me sharing my story, I hope to show that, hey, I can be transparent and vulnerable, but that doesn't make me weaker for being able to talk about my insecurities and weaknesses. In fact, it makes me, stronger because I'm able to put that out there and say, yeah, this is what I struggle with. But, how strong of a person do you have to be able to basically showcase your weaknesses to others, right? And I actually recently, the words matter. I say weakness, but I've been told that like areas of opportunity, right? Like the words we tell ourselves, they make a difference on how our mind processes them. So I'm still trying to work on these things with self-talk that I have, but like not calling it a weakness, calling it an area of opportunity, right? That's a more positive spin. And when you start to change the way your positive self-talk, how you think about yourself internally is how you'll project the way that you feel externally, right? So it starts from within. And I think that's, again, like, it's all a part of the process, man. It's just, so I try to just have these conversations when I go out and speak and just give people like a starting point. Hey, this is my story and this is how I got to where I was at. Maybe you can walk away from my story now and go, okay, I'm going to start taking a look back at my story.
If you're out there and you're about to start this self-development journey, which, by the way, I'm obsessed with this stuff. Like, I have also been on this journey since 2018, and I do Miracle Morning. I do my routine every morning with all of my little friggin' things. But one thing I would say is, try not to the listeners, if you are thinking about doing this, like just writing down just a little bit. I know people talk about journaling and sometimes it seems like this overwhelming thing where it's like, oh God, what do I even write about? But what I found is so cool is on the mornings where I'm like, not really sure, what do I need to be doing this morning, whatever. I pull up one of my old notebooks where I just have jotted down thoughts or where I am in the process along with a date. And it is so cool to look back and realize that those, just like you did, you said a weakness and right there you spot corrected it. And you said areas of opportunity, and that little training, over time just becomes a part of you. And then you look back a couple years ago and you're like, wow, dude, look at how far. And then it's like this inspirational energy filling thing. And you want to just take on the future.
Yeah. It's a reference point is what it is. Right. And I've done the same thing. I've journaled and I have a journal from my time on the show, which was 2 years ago at this point. And so I'll go back sometimes and I'll read it. And the language that I'm using is different. And what it does is I'm able to take the reference point from 2 years ago, i.e. that journal and present day me, and I can see the growth through the difference in mindset. The things that I was concerned about that I was writing down are no longer concerns. I did an audio recording when I was driving cross country from Virginia Beach after my ex and I broke up. I drove from Virginia Beach to Arizona. So I had a lot of time in the car, 33 hours. And I basically turned my phone on, record, and I just audio, and I just started talking about what the next chapter of my life, what my fears were, what I thought was going to happen, where I'm currently at mentally. And I just happened to stumble upon that audio message a week ago. And I had no idea what I was going to do when I arrived in Arizona. I was like, I want to get there, and I guess maybe I'll go back into medical sales. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. Now here I am. I'm not in medical sales. I'm a real estate agent. I'm speaking on mental health. I have an online, training business that's successful. And my life looks completely different. Right. But because I had that reference point, I could go, wow, look how wrong you were. You were panicking about stuff that never happened. That's also a good thing to realize. Like, we need to be reminded that sometimes our mind, we are not all of our thoughts, just the thoughts that we choose to believe, right? So sometimes it's good for our mind to realize, like, I got that wrong. So maybe these fears that I keep pushing out in the future, maybe I shouldn't be concerned about them until they actually become a reality.
Oh, it's so good. I was listening to Ryan Holiday on a podcast the other day. Which one was it? I think it was Diary of a CEO.
And great. Yeah, I follow both Ryan Holiday and I follow the Diary of a CEO as well.
And I can't remember if it was actually on that, so I might have screwed it up. But anyway, I've read Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy and The Obstacle is the Way, and been reading him, The Daily Stoic, but I'd never listened to him before that podcast. And I thought it ties to what you were just saying about he was talking about pulling yourself out and asking yourself, does this actually matter? Because most of the time it doesn't actually matter. And we're like all spun up and in, high emotions and so much energy being poured into things that if you just zoom out, you're like, nope, am I dying? Are my relationships burning to the ground? Nope, I'm good.
Yeah. Another way I heard it is, when you're in an uncomfortable position, it's probably because you lack just a skill set, or you lack some type of understanding, or it's unfamiliar to you. But it's important when you're in that place of discomfort to ask yourself, am I truly in physical or emotional danger, or am I just uncomfortable? Right? Like, a lot of times we'll just go, oop, this feels weird, I'm going to get out of here. Right? Like, I don't like this. So whenever I first started dancing, hip hop dance now, it's like one of my favorite hobbies. The first day that I walked in, it was supposed to be a beginner's class, and there were people that were very advanced that were in the beginner's class. The first 5 minutes, my mind's like, go, run, get out of here, go home. This is going to be embarrassing. And then I stepped back. I said, am I in any physical and emotional danger? No, I'm just uncomfortable. Stick it through. And then by the end of that hour, those advanced people, we had to do a routine. I was like, well, now they're going to laugh at me, because they're so good. And they were my biggest hype men. They were cheering on every one of us, and we were clearly leaps and bounds behind them. But that's when it hit me. I'm like, again, you got to pull yourself out sometimes. Your brain wants to freak you out and think that you're in worst case scenario land. But I always now, whenever I'm in a place of discomfort, I always ask that question, am I in danger, or am I just uncomfortable? And then if I'm in danger, I get out. If I'm uncomfortable, then I stay.
Dude, so cool. It is funny, the hip hop thing. I stalked you before this, and I was like, on your Instagram page, I was like, damn, with the hip hop. It's very cool. Everyone, you should go check it out. It's Clayton Echard on the gram. Definitely go and follow him. Clayton, what did we not talk about today that you would like to talk about or share? Yeah,
I think. Okay, let me think. I feel like there's so much I can talk about, and I feel like we covered a lot of great things. I'm just gonna maybe share something that's just pressing that I think would be good for people. So something that was that really helped me recently. I think that we're in a world of comparison culture, social media. We're always looking at people's lives, and we're seeing the best versions of their lives. Right? That's what social media is. It's a highlight reel. And a lot of times we're fearful. We don't take action because we're fearful of what we think others are going to think of us if we do it. It's not there's a lot of things I think people want to do, but they don't do it because they're fearful of judgment from others. And I heard recently, it was in a Jay Shetty podcast, and it was with Tom Holland. I think he's the actor from Spider-Man. And I just want to share this. I think it's so cool. It's because a lot of times we are so fearful of what others think. And so to combat that, he said, how I approach this, or I heard this once from somebody else, that if someone doesn't like me, or if you have a problem with me, then, call my phone or text me and let me know. But if you don't have my phone number, then you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. That wasn't verbatim, but like that was the thought process behind it. And I think that's so powerful because I took that to heart and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the things that I want to do because all the people that have my phone number support my dancing, support the fact that I got my hair permed, support all these little fun things that I am doing. All the people that are the naysayers that are telling me I'm embarrassing myself and I need to stop, they don't have my phone number. So they don't know me well enough to judge me. So their opinions don't matter. So I wanted to share that because I think a lot of people don't take action on things because of what they think others are going to think. And it's like, ask yourself, the people that you're fearful of judging you, do they actually know you? And if they do, well, then maybe give it a second thought. If they don't know you, then let that be the last thought you have.
One quick wrap up question. What events are you going to this year?
Oh man, I live, week by week. I mean, my schedule packs out. I don't have any when you say like events, just could it be
I was thinking like, of course, real estate, but also like self-development type of things or really anything at this point. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I wish I had a good answer, but I don't really have anything on the map right now. That's a question that I'll just have to say. I plan my life really by the weeks. And so there's nothing that's like coming up months ahead that I have. Currently, I'm doing a lot of self-improvement just through, again, like my self-education. But yes, nothing on the boards right now.
Gotcha. Okay. People out there, they are dying to see your hip hop dancing. They want to go and they want to hear your story, which I wish we had more time. I was going to ask you to share your story on here, but it'll be, save it for another day. They want to do that. And people want to send you referrals to Scottsdale, Arizona. Where's the best place for them to reach out?
Yeah, I make it really easy for everyone and myself. I just funnel everything through my Instagram. So people, if they want to send me referrals, you can go to my Instagram and there's an email button and you click on that email and that goes directly to my inbox, which is monitored by me, not anybody else. So that's how you can send me referrals is I read emails all day and they can send me it by just clicking on my Instagram profile. Perfect. Or if you don't have Instagram, if you're not to that point, if you're like, again, I didn't have an Instagram 2 years ago. I got on board late. You can also go to ClaytonEchard.com and you can find a way to contact me through there as well. That's my website.
Dude, I bounce back and forth. So I've had an Instagram for years, but I go one day, I'm like, digital minimalism, never want to look at my phone, put it down. And then the next day I'm like, must have social media to build, not only the brand, but also all the opportunities that you even talked about. It's like you built your entire new circle through Instagram. So I'm just like on like a freaking teeter-totter over here.
Yeah, the teeter-totter is the balance between what's good for you and your mental health. What can you handle? That balance, right? That's a deep dive into another conversation, but everyone has to find out Instagram, social media should be a tool. I've had it rule my life before and I was most miserable when I spent the most time on it. So you got to find that balance of what's productive. And then when you realize you're just scrolling mindlessly on Instagram, that's not productive. That's when you need to get off line. But there is Instagram and all these social medias allow a greater sense of connection. You can connect with anybody in the world, and that's pretty incredible.
That's so cool. Okay. Well, listeners, you know where to go to connect with Clayton. And if you want to hang out with me, I am The Shelby Show on Instagram. And please go and hang out with Aaron Amuchastegui, the owner of the show. Super cool dude, the most cool ever. And guys, that is all we have for today. Clayton, thank you so much for coming on the show. And Real Estate Rockstars, thanks for listening.